Okay, I think we're on. So just to set some context, uh, so you know that we're gonna archive all of these Google Hangouts with the UCCI course teachers on our website and tie them to the course descriptions on the course
Oh,
pages,
weird. All right.
so that
Okay.
anybody that looks for a course or searches for a course can
Oh,
kind of get some extra information about it. So
Perfect.
go ahead and get started.
okay, I think we're on.
Oh
So
no,
just to set some context,
wait a second.
so you know that we're gonna archive all of these Google Hangouts with the.
I don't know why that was playing, but
Got it. You found it.
okay. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
I have no idea why it started playing what I was talking about, but that's okay. Okay, so my first question, I have them up on my phone, which you already know about, but we'll go ahead and go through the questions. Since you were on the team that actually conceptualized and kind of designed the course, and you were, I guess, brought a couple of colleagues with you from your school to do that, I just wanted to know kind of how the course was imagined on the conceptual level and what you were hoping to achieve when you and your colleagues wrote that course.
When we left to go down to the conference, I think we all wanted to create something that was bigger than, well, excuse me, than what we were, and something that supported math students out of a traditional realm. Other than that, that was the basis. And then it was a bunch of brainstorming and just creativity. We had principals, we had a guidance counselor, we had a visual performing arts teacher, myself, and an art teacher. And so we knew that the goal was to take mathematics, but we wanted to look at it in a realm that wasn't a traditional approach. And from that, it was charting, it was creating, it was, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? Well, we have business math classes, we have curriculums and disciplines that still are in a frame of mind or a mindset that's a traditional mathematics background. And so our goal was to look at it in a different approach for a child that or a student that would feel threatened by mathematics. How could we approach it? And so the art came about. And from there, we would just sit and brainstorm for hours and hours about, well, what could we take that would be from the art world, the art realm, speak the same language, and look at it in terms of an Algebra 1 course. And we just started creating.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, pardon?
Oh, I was going to say, do you feel like you accomplished what you wanted to achieve, like creating kind of a non-traditional math course that made math accessible to sort of non-traditional students or students who would otherwise not be engaged?
It did. It created a vocabulary. And for example, when we look at, I talked to you about the one-point perspective drawings that we did with, and
Okay.
we would, I think I gave you a black and white picture of one of those. We would talk to the students about all different points coming to a set perspective point. And what we would understand when we talk in mathematics about slope and whether it would be positive or negative, whether inclination was going up or going down, it was interesting how students did not intuitively have a grasp of that until we worked with them in their artwork. We will test them on it. We would say, is this a positive slope or a negative slope? And they'll answer back yes or no in our traditional way of asking questions and assessing them. But where they would place a line on a picture would depend on where it was, whether they thought it was positive or negative. And so it gave us an example of allowing them to understand, to intuitively own it versus it's something that they have to regurgitate back.
Wow, that's so cool. So when you said it wasn't until, maybe you already explained this and it's just because I have no background in math, but I need more information. But when you say it wasn't until they saw the application, the art application, that they understood the math concepts. I think that's kind of what you just said. What was it about doing the art itself that sort of had them make more meaning out of the math?
So let's say we put a point, and we can just use my nose for an example of that, and I'm going to look at a pen. If there's a perspective point that's coming down, whether it's coming this direction, which would you would see, as a positive line, versus coming from this direction, which they would see as a negative slope, they wouldn't necessarily understand that when it was down here it was negative, but what if it's up here? Is it still negative? So a reference point for them, where they would not understand direction, slope in their picture, so we would have them draw. We'd have them take all of the lines in their drawing that had a negative slope and make them red. All of the lines in their drawing that were positive, make them have a blue, trace them in blue. Anything that had a zero slope, anything that had an undefined slope. And what we learned was they didn't understand it intuitively until they brought either color or a reference frame of reference from their drawings to it.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know, a goal, again, I mean, that's for them to own it, but then their ability has to be able to calculate and use it. But that was a stepping point for them that later on, that was something that was taken for granted.
Okay.
We didn't have to go back and revisit and revisit and revisit, which we often do in mathematics for many of our either developmentally challenged or lower functioning or students that just, that's not their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And I think at some point, when I share the samples of the student work, we could maybe talk more about that. But I wanted to continue asking some questions about implementation. Mm-hmm. So you talked about how you were, like how the course came together conceptually. And then what was your experience going, and then maybe you did talk a little bit about this, but in terms of just going from the course on the page and taking it into the classroom, what do you feel like it was what you imagined? What were the challenges? What were the successes? What do you knew now that you, or knew then that you know now, that kind of stuff?
I guess in order to support a student in a non-traditional method, we have to look in a non-traditional form of developing curriculum and developing a class lesson. If I chose to continue to function, did I lose you? Looks like I just lost you.
Are you?
Oh, there you are. Okay, I'll keep talking. Your screen just froze.
Uh-oh.
There you are.
Okay.
Are we back?
This is our little hangout, so we'll have technical difficulties. But
everything I looked at as far as how to function in a traditional classroom, I ended up throwing out the window. For example, they'd come in their first drawing and we would be working on ratio. And we would be measuring we'd be looking at Leonard or Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. And we'd be measuring ratios of our arm span to our height. And then talking about, you know, was it a ratio, was it proportion? And what I found out was I had to be willing to go to wherever the students had interest or wherever the students had background knowledge or didn't have background knowledge. And so I would do all this prep ahead of time thinking, okay, I want them to make sure that they can solve a proportion today. Well, what I realized is they already had that or they didn't have it. So there's a lot of, the implementation was exhausting. It is a prep beyond belief because there wasn't curriculum developed. I had a math book, I have math resources, but I didn't have prescribed lessons each day. And so the challenge that comes with this course, and I've had many people contact me over the last few years, can I have some of your curriculum? And I would giggle and say, well, the outline is on the website. The curriculum is based upon you and the art teacher and what you choose to do with the kids each day. And for many teachers, and for myself, that's extremely overwhelming. I would create one year, I taught it a couple years, and then I would go back and say, well, this didn't work, or this component of this was very successful, so I'm going to elaborate on this aspect of it. So some students, what I learned with that is your collaboration time with your co-teacher is imperative. Having prep time set up and allocated together, but also having the ability to have time to be in each other's space and classroom. And those are the logistics that come about, you know, as finances come, and courses and allocation of sections per teachers. And I mean, that's an administrative challenge. But going in for that as a teacher, I'm off track a little bit with this, but that's the big picture concept in order to set up this course, is knowing that the teachers have to have time to communicate together. They have to have time to be in each other's classroom. And I think for success of longevity, they also have the ability to have days together where they can create, which was something we really didn't have in the beginning or know that we needed because we were just in the trenches trying to create each day. So there's an outline on the website from the course, but the day-to-day activities is something that's got to be dealt with based on the needs of the children.
Are you there?
Yes, I am. We might looks like we have a slow internet.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my connection or your connection, but we're getting what we need, so we're good. I guess in an ideal world, with an administrator that sort of embraces that ideal world, what would the schedule look like that would give you everything you need to be able to implement the course in the most ideal way possible?
We ran it two different ways. This course is set up for two different class periods so that they're getting their visual performing arts and they're also getting their mathematics for their A through G requirements. And so the first year we ran it two different periods. So let's say period 2 they'd have art, period 3 they would have math. And the next year we ran it on what we call an A-B schedule. So they alternated math and art every other day. There were drawbacks to both. What we noticed is the students had a harder time going from art to mathematics. So if the art period was first, the mathematics period was second, it was pulling them, which is quite interesting, that was the whole point of the course, was pulling them out of their artistic frame of mind into their analytical frame of mind. So in an ideal world, we not only had, like my prep was during the art period, and the art teacher's prep was during the math period. So that allowed us to, I would work often in the room just to hear what was going on, or we would trade off and say, well, the next 2 days I'll take them for both the art and the math, allow you to go prep and create for some activities. And so it required a flexibility with administration, with the office knowing where we were, where to find us, because the art building traditionally is not right with the mathematics classroom. So in an ideal world, that allowed, in which we had that, with the principal to know what we were doing ahead of time. So great communication. Bringing in the technology was absolutely imperative. We had a classroom set up of Mac computers. And so they had online portfolios. And I was also, and that was the beginning of a Google Docs, I had email accounts where they would come in, log on, and their assignment would be right there on it. And so how the room's set up as far as having a computer in front of them and having art stations set up for them, having a traditional classroom once in a while where they were able to just focus on their own in a desk on a one-on-one basis. So it does require, and then breakout time. Getting together at least once a month, preferably it was once a week. We were meeting once a week to create for the following week, but to also summarize for that week. I hope that helped. Did that say?
Yeah, no, it helps. I mean, I think it helps people to know that there needs to be a common prep time for the math teacher and the art teacher, and how much time is involved in just outside of the classroom, kind of working on planning the curriculum and that sort of thing. And I think I'm glad that you mentioned that the courses as they're written and presented by UCCI it's just a framework. So it's assignments and kind of an overview of the purpose of the work, but there's no curriculum. And that the idea behind that is that it's really up to the teachers that implement it what the assignments look like in the classroom. And I think for some people that's very liberating, and they can really give their population of students what they need because of that, because there's no pre-written curriculum. But also that can be really daunting because teachers don't have a ton of time to, set aside to be able to put together their own curriculum. So I feel like you hit on that. Yeah.
Correct. And in any true perspective, and you look at the different units, you'll say, well, why wasn't this covered in depth? Well, there are always going to be mathematics that you're just going to have to focus on. And I'm going to step, if you don't mind, for a moment to what our requirements are in public education as far as the state standards and the state testing, and remind people that this was created under our old standards. And so we were stuck in that frame of mind. Well, we didn't have our 26 checklist of standards that we need to cover. And I remember over and over the UC saying, that's not important to us. We want students that come to us in college that can think. And so we were required with this dichotomy to create curriculum that still met the standards, the old standards, but at the same time it was the bouncing board, the beginning step to move forward to where we are now with the Common Core. So I see, some things possibly that you could be rewritten, but this course also now fits the approach of the Common Core, of what our goal is with the students within a classroom. So that in its own is so much more liberating for us, because I didn't have to say, okay, I've covered all this with the Da Vinci course, but I still have to go back and do these specific things because I'm required to by law. So as this course is set up, yes, the creativity is wonderful, but with that is the daunting task of keeping track. Well, do my students still have this down? Do my students still understand this? They understand it conceptually, they can articulate and explain, but can they procedurally now go through and do the basic mathematics that are involved? So you had to kind of set yourself up each day with a rubric in the classroom and each unit. Okay, my students, they understand this, but can they procedurally do the calculations now? And then having them develop the ownership. Great, where are you in this perspective? And now looking back, going in as a teacher that would help to have them set up a rubric for this, that the students can learn to self-assess, because our goal ultimately is a student has the ability to self-assess their learning and to get them to that point. And as freshmen, that's a big task. But that we knew what they needed to have for each unit. So the common goal, the assessment in mind when you start the units. These were the big ideas. And so what art activities do you want to cover that will introduce these concepts? And then what are you going to do each day that expands on the mathematics concepts but weaves itself with the art that's going on? And so we might have had an art project set up and realized the kids aren't seeing the connection. So we've got to do something different. Are we going to change the art activity? Am I going to go back to a more traditional approach in the classroom for a day or two to have them develop the understanding? And that's what we often do in mathematics, is when push comes to shove, we'll go back and pull a traditional format. And so that's where, depending on the comfort level of the teacher, like you said, this is a framework. This isn't the day-to-day curriculum. The comfort level of the teacher. How do you handle that within your classroom when we know they aren't getting it or conceptually understanding it with the way we thought they would?
Yeah, that makes sense. You actually mentioned Common Core, and one of my questions was sort of what has it been like, or what was it like, sort of, I don't actually know if you did work on transitioning the course to Common Core, but I guess just can you talk a little bit about what that was like or would be like, or what recommendations you would make? Or
it lends itself in the format to automatically give the students depth of a concept versus just touching on the various. For example, being able to use the quadratic formula, or being able for them to calculate slope-intercept form of a line. It allows them to, the course facilitates the Common Core approach, I guess is a way of saying it. So we were ahead of the Common Core as far as how we wanted students to develop understanding of mathematics by the way we created the course. So that lends itself to the Common Core. What the challenge is now with this course is the actual specific content that's in it that still has to see some revamping, because the content has shifted in what's covered now with the Common Core. So much of the Da Vinci course is now covered in the 8th grade mathematics courses. We had pushed some of the Algebra 2 content into Da Vinci, for example, working with the quadratics and the different forms of quadratics that wasn't necessarily covered in Algebra 1. So we'd already we knew the students needed to understand that, which now lent itself to where that's now in the Algebra 1 content. So the approach of the course, to summarize, automatically lends itself to more of the Common Core facilitation of curriculum. in-depth understanding, their ability to articulate it back, their ability to make connections, their ability to analyze, their ability to look for precision, that we were pushing above and beyond with the old state standards.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And so the other question I had about implementation before we maybe look at some of the student work, I realized that the little icon that I had for sharing screenshots, I don't see.
Okay.
I have a new computer, so I guess I'm not sure I'll be able to share it, but we can just like talk about what people would be looking at, and then I can make sure that they're shared alongside the Hangout so that folks can look at it while, like, toggle back and forth between that and the Hangout while they're listening to it. But just in terms of, you had mentioned in a previous conversation that depending on the student population in the classroom, like the type of student or the skill level, that implementation, like from class to class, could change. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
So initially, this is a marketing approach. We went down to the 8th grade and talked to them about what were their options for high school mathematics as far as their Algebra 1 courses. And we also worked with the counselors. And the first year, the counselors put many of our students that were at the tipping point of whether they should even be going on to Algebra 1 or going back into some remedial support mathematics. And so that created additional challenges in the classroom. Some of those students were in there because of their discipline issues. Some of them were in there because of their home life situations, their attendance issues. Some of it was actually mathematics was a struggle for them. And so when you're looking at creating this course for the first time, a high recommendation would be give some success to the teachers by giving them a spectrum of level of students. Don't target just one population of students because it set up some challenges. It set up, I spent a lot more work developing a class culture in the beginning that would not necessarily have had to been set up depending on the buy-in of the students coming in. So having students that want to take the course versus having students that were put in the course because the counselor thought they should be put in the course would be a high recommendation as this is created the first few times. I lost you again. I think we need to wait till it catches up, Katie. I'm going to check a connection right here in my internet first for one quick second also to see if that'll help. I don't know if that'll help or not. Uh-oh. I'm sorry for giggling. Oh my goodness.
I can't believe, so, yeah, my power went out for like 2 seconds.
Okay.
And, yeah, and it's back, everything's back up and running now, so I don't know.
Because I still have it up on my computer. It still says.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny. Maybe I can get it back up. Let me see. The only thing is this one.
Oh, because it was set up for a permanent link to go back to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when oh, there you are. Okay. Oh. This technology is very strange. Okay. So I don't know. Because I still have it up on my computer. Okay. Well, my camera light is not on, so it doesn't seem like it's recording right now, but I think it may have been recording what we were just doing.
Okay. Because I'm on the bottom screen and it still says waiting for people to join the video call.
Oh, how weird. Okay. I have no idea how to get back in, though.
Trying to see if I can figure out how to add people to it. There's also, if you look at the top, Katie, there's a bandwidth usage, and I made sure that was up on the complete top. So that allowed, okay, I'm going to click on you.